Every night, the mansion echoed with her coughs, soft, haunting, and unanswered. But when the new maid lingered by her door, she saw something no doctor had, a reason behind every breathless cry. Now let me tell you how this incredible story unfolded. Subscribe, share your heart in the comments, and tell me where you're watching from, because your support keeps these stories alive. Now, let's begin. The dawn light spilled across the Harrington estate, golden rays painting cold marble floors. Inside, silence ruled, the kind of silence that screamed. Elara Harrington, only daughter of business tycoon Edward Harrington, sat by her window in a white silk gown, her skin almost matching the fabric. Her fingers trembled as she held her teacup, each breath shallow, labored. For 3 years, her illness had baffled doctors across continents. Money could buy the world, but not her cure. Across the corridor, servants whispered her name with pity. Poor Miss Elara. She was the ghost who lived among them. That morning, a new presence entered the mansion. Amara Bennett, 24, quiet-eyed, wearing a plain uniform that had been neatly mended twice. She had come from the city, where she'd cleaned hotels and cared for her dying grandmother until the end. This new job, arranged through a distant cousin, was her last chance to survive the winter. Mrs. Delaney, the head housekeeper, walked Amara through the hallways. "Your duties are light," she said briskly. "Dust the east wing, change the linens, and tend to Miss Harrington when called. She rarely speaks." Amara nodded, though her chest tightened. The mention of illness always stirred something in her, memories of late nights, oxygen masks, and whispered prayers. But she said nothing. Later that afternoon, Amara entered Elara's room for the first time. The curtains were half drawn, letting in soft light that danced on the girl's pale cheeks. Elara turned her head slightly, startled. "I'm sorry, miss," Amara murmured. "I didn't mean to wake you." Elara's voice was faint. "No one wakes me anymore." Amara froze. The words carried more than sadness. They carried resignation. In that instant, something within her shifted. She had seen illness before, but this was different. The air itself seemed heavy, like grief that had settled into every wall. As Amara began her quiet work, dusting, folding, replacing flowers in the vase, Elara watched her with tired eyes. "You're new," she whispered. "Yes, miss. Amara." Elara managed a weak smile. "Pretty name. Means eternal, doesn't it?" "I think so," Amara said softly. "My mother chose it before she passed." A silence bloomed between them, fragile, like glass, but it wasn't uncomfortable. It was recognition. When Amara left the room, she lingered outside the door, hand pressed against her chest. Something about the girl's stillness unsettled her. Not fear, but sorrow too deep for words. That night, as she finished her chores, Amara overheard the doctor speaking with Mr. Harrington in the study. "I'm afraid there's no change," the doctor said. "Her condition? It's psychological as much as physical. She's losing the will to live." Mr. Harrington's voice trembled. "Find another specialist. I don't care what it costs." Amara paused in the hall, heart pounding. No will to live? She closed her eyes and whispered, "Or maybe she just needs someone to remind her why." Have you ever seen someone fade away, not from illness, but from loneliness? Tell me in the comments, what do you think truly heals a heart that's forgotten how to feel? The next few days in the Harrington mansion felt like time itself was holding its breath. The doctor's visits came and went, nurses whispered and departed, yet Elara's condition remained the same. Fragile, unmoving, like a rose kept in glass too long. But Amara, she began to notice things no one else did. When she dusted the shelves, she saw unopened medicine bottles lined neatly on the tray, not because Alara refused them, but because she'd forgotten they existed. When she changed the bed sheets, she noticed a faint scent of lavender that didn't match the soap in the laundry. And when she brought Alara her meals, she caught glimpses of the girl's fingers trembling, not just from weakness, but from fear. "Did you sleep, Miss Alara?" Amara asked one morning, setting down a tray of porridge and tea. Alara's eyes darted toward the door before she answered. "As much as I could." "Nightmares?" Alara hesitated, then nodded. "I keep hearing someone crying in the hall outside my room. But when I call out, there's no one." Amara frowned. "Have you told your father?" Alara smiled faintly. A brittle smile. "Father doesn't believe in things he can't measure with money." Amara's chest tightened at that. She wanted to reach out, to touch Alara's hand, but she restrained herself. She had learned long ago that some people needed space to feel safe. Later that evening, Amara was cleaning the hallway outside Alara's room when she saw it, a faint crack in the wall, just behind the old portrait of Mrs. Harrington, Alara's late mother. A soft draft escaped through it, carrying with it a faint floral scent, the same lavender she'd noticed earlier. Curiosity pricked at her, but she forced herself to look away. Servants didn't pry, servants didn't question, yet that scent haunted her as she worked. At dinner, the house was silent again. Alara didn't come down. Mr. Harrington dined alone, staring into his untouched meal. The chandelier light caught the silver in his hair, and for the first time, Amara saw not arrogance, but exhaustion. When the meal ended, he rose abruptly. "Make sure my daughter takes her medicine," he said. "No excuses." "Yes, sir," Amara replied, lowering her eyes. That night, when she went to Alara's room with the pills, the girl was awake, sitting by the window, moonlight brushing her pale face. "I can't take them," she whispered before Amara could speak. "Why not?" "They make me weaker, sleepier, like I'm sinking." Amara frowned, studying the bottle. The label had faded, and a thick layer of dust clung to its rim. "Who gives you these?" she asked softly. "My father insists," Alara said. "He says they keep my heart calm." Amara hesitated, then placed the bottle down carefully. "And do they?" Alara looked up, tears glistening in her eyes. "No, they steal my dreams." For a long moment, the two women just stared at each other, one trembling, the other burning quietly with resolve. The flicker of candlelight reflected in Amara's eyes, and something wordless passed between them, the beginning of trust. That night, Amara didn't sleep. She couldn't. She sat by the servants' quarters window, the wind whispering through the curtains, replaying Alara's words over and over. "They steal my dreams." And with every whisper of the lavender-scented air, the question grew louder in her chest. What if her sickness isn't what it seems? If someone you loved was fading away, and every clue pointed to something deeper than illness, would you risk everything to uncover the truth? Comment below what your heart would tell you to do. For the first time since arriving, Amara couldn't look at the Harrington mansion without a shiver. Its marble halls, the heavy drapes, the portraits watching silently from gilded frames, everything now seemed to hide something. Days passed, and Alara's condition worsened. Her voice grew thinner, her eyes dimmer. The doctors came again, 3 this time, leaving with furrowed brows and quiet frustration. Yet amid their medical confusion, Amara began piecing together the subtle inconsistencies. Every night, the lavender scent grew stronger. Every morning, Alara's lips were paler. And then came the moment that changed everything. Amara was preparing Alara's room for the night when she noticed the medicine tray again. The pills were missing. "Alara," she asked gently, "did you take them?" The girl hesitated. I threw them away." "Where?" "In the bin by the vanity." Amara checked. Empty. Clean. She froze. The servants weren't allowed to clean Alara's private bin without the butler's instruction, yet someone had. Later, as she carried linens down the hall, Amara heard hushed voices behind the study door. Mr. Harrington's low tone vibrated through the wood. "She's growing weaker," he said. A woman's voice, unfamiliar, replied, "That's expected. The formula takes time to work through her system." "Work through?" His voice trembled. "You promised this would help her." "It is helping," the woman replied coldly. "It's keeping her calm, keeping her quiet." Amara's hands went numb. Formula? Keeping her quiet? She pressed closer to the door, heart thundering. Then the floor creaked. The voices stopped. She ran. That night, Alara sensed her restlessness. "You've been different," she whispered as Amara helped her into bed. "I just worry for you," Amara said softly. Alara smiled faintly. "You're the only one who does." The room darkened as the candle burned low. Amara sat by her bedside, pretending to sew. "Your father loves you," she said, unsure whether she believed it. Alara's gaze turned distant. "Father loves his empire. Mother used to say he hides behind his duty because the truth frightens him." "The truth?" Alara's eyes shimmered with unshed tears. "She died suddenly. They said it was her heart. But sometimes I dream she's still calling me, warning me." Amara felt the air grow colder. "What does she say?" Alara looked toward the portrait above the fireplace, Mrs. Harrington's painted smile almost alive in the firelight. "She says, 'The house remembers.'" The words clung to Amara's mind long after Alara fell asleep. "The house remembers." What did that mean? Unable to resist, she returned to the hallway and stared again at the cracked wall behind the portrait. The lavender scent was stronger now, almost suffocating. With trembling fingers, she pushed the frame aside and pressed on the wall. It gave way slightly, like there was hollow space behind it, a hidden passage. Her breath caught. She stepped back just as footsteps echoed from the corridor. The butler, Mr. Graham, holding a lantern. "What are you doing here?" he asked, voice sharp. I was checking the air draft," Amara stammered. He frowned, eyes cold. Servants shouldn't wander, especially not near that portrait. Why not? His silence was answer enough. As he turned and left, the lavender scent swirled again, a ghostly trace in the air. Amara's pulse raced. She whispered into the empty hall. "I don't know what they're hiding, Miss Alara, but I'll find it." The storm rolled in before dawn. Rain hammering the glass panes, wind howling like a beast circling the mansion. Thunder shook the chandeliers. Power flickered, plunging the halls into ghostly half-light. The storm brought isolation, and with it, revelation. When Amara arrived in Alara's room with breakfast, she found her trembling violently. "Alara!" she gasped, rushing to her side. The girl's skin was slick with sweat, her eyes glassy. The medicine bottle lay shattered on the floor. "I didn't take it," Alara whispered weakly. "He'll be angry." "Who?" "My father." Amara steadied her trembling hands. "No one will hurt you. I'm here." As lightning flashed outside, Amara reached for the bell cord to summon help, but the string had been cut clean. Her breath caught. This wasn't coincidence. "Stay still," she whispered. "I'll find help." She ran to the hall, but the mansion was eerily empty. The staff were gone. Only the butler's lantern flickered faintly by the stairs. The storm had trapped everyone in the west wing. She was alone with Alara, and the truth that refused to stay hidden. Returning to the room, she noticed something new, a thin line of purple vapor seeping through the crack in the wall behind the portrait. The lavender scent. It wasn't perfume. It was something else. "Alara," she whispered, voice shaking. "How long have you smelled that scent?" "Since before Mother died," the girl murmured. "She used to say it helped her sleep." Amara pressed her sleeve over her nose and pushed the portrait aside again. The wall was damp with condensation, and behind the crack, she could hear the faint hum of machinery, pipes, pumps, gas. "Oh my God," she breathed. "They're poisoning you." A violent flash of lightning illuminated Alara's terrified face. "Poisoning?" she whispered. "But why?" Amara's throat tightened. "I don't know, but we're getting you out of this room." She wrapped the girl's trembling body in a shawl and guided her down the hall. Every shadow seemed alive, every creak in the floor a warning. When they reached the staircase, a voice stopped them cold. "Where do you think you're going?" Mr. Harrington stood there, raincoat draped over his shoulders, eyes burning with a mixture of fear and authority. Amara's heart pounded. "She's sick because of something in that wall," she said. "That scent, it's toxic." His jaw tightened. "You don't know what you're talking about." "I do," she insisted. "You're killing her." For a long moment, the thunder filled the silence between them. Then his voice broke. "You think I'd harm my own daughter?" Amara's defiance faltered at the pain in his eyes, but she didn't lower her guard. "Then explain it," she demanded softly. "Explain what's killing her if it's not what's seeping from her walls." His hands trembled. "Because she was never supposed to be here," he said quietly. "Her mother built that room for herself. She suffered from episodes, couldn't sleep. The lavender gas was meant to calm her. Until one night, it didn't." Alara's voice was small. "You knew." He turned toward her, tears streaming freely now. "I tried to fix it. But when you grew ill, I thought the air was harmless. I just couldn't bear to lose you the way I lost her." Silence followed. Heavy, raw, shattering. Amara stepped closer, lowering her voice. "Then stop pretending money can fix her. Let her breathe. Let her live." Something inside him cracked. He turned, clutching the wall, and whispered, "Then help me save her." When love turns into control, even with good intentions, is it still love? What would you have done in Amara's place? Obey or defy? Share your thoughts below. The storm raged through the night, but inside the Harrington mansion, another storm had already begun. Edward Harrington led them to the study, the one room untouched by time. He moved like a man carrying decades of ghosts. Amara supported Alara, whose breathing grew easier the farther they went from the east wing. "Sit down," Edward murmured, his voice shaking. "You both deserve the truth." He poured a glass of brandy, but didn't drink it. His reflection in the crystal decanter seemed smaller, human, haunted. "When my wife, Isabel, was alive," he began, "she battled anxiety, depression. The doctors prescribed herbal therapies, lavender vapor among them. I built that room for her comfort. The system was meant to release soothing oils, but something malfunctioned one night. The concentration became toxic." Alara's lips trembled. "And she died in her sleep." He nodded, eyes red. "I found her the next morning. She looked peaceful, but the scent was everywhere. I shut down the system, sealed the room, or thought I did. Years later, when you became ill, I believed it was fate repeating itself. I refused to face the possibility that the very thing that took her might be harming you. Amara felt her heart ache for him, for all of them. You blamed yourself, she said softly. I couldn't lose her again, he whispered, turning toward his daughter. You look so much like her, Alara. Every day I walked past your door, and I saw her ghost. Tears welled in Alara's eyes. So you locked me in that room to protect me? He dropped his gaze. Yes, foolishly. Love can blind as much as it saves. For a long moment, silence filled the room. Not the cold silence that haunted the mansion before, but the silence of truth finally spoken. Amara stepped forward, voice trembling. You both need to forgive yourselves, or this house will keep breathing pain. Alara turned to her, eyes glistening. You speak like someone who knows how. Amara hesitated, then smiled faintly. I cared for my grandmother until she passed. I thought I'd saved her, but in the end, all I did was hold her hand as she slipped away. For a long time, I thought I'd failed her. But she once told me, love isn't measured by how long you keep someone, but how deeply you see them while they're here. Alara's breath hitched. That's beautiful. Amara's voice softened. So when I look at you, Miss Alara, I see someone who still has time left. You just need to want to live again. The words hit something deep. Alara reached out a trembling hand and took Amara's. You've done more for me than anyone. You saw me when I was invisible. Edward's gaze flickered between them. Father, daughter, and the woman who had brought light back into their lives. For the first time, the old man's composure broke entirely. He knelt before Alara, tears streaming freely. Please forgive me, he whispered, for the fear, for the blindness, for the silence. Alara placed her hand on his shoulder. You don't have to be forgiven, Father. You just have to stay. Outside, thunder rolled one final time, and then, as if in answer, the storm began to quiet. The house, for the first time in years, breathed differently. Sometimes, the hardest forgiveness is the one we owe ourselves. The morning after the storm, the Harrington estate no longer felt like a tomb. Sunlight streamed through the once dim corridors, touching the paintings, the stair rails, the grand piano that had stood silent for years. The heavy scent of lavender, once suffocating, was gone. In its place drifted the faint aroma of rain and clean air. Alara sat by the open window in a wool shawl, breathing deeply. Her skin carried color again, soft, gentle, alive. Amara entered quietly, holding a small tray with tea. You look stronger today, she said with a smile. Alara's lips curved faintly. I feel stronger. I think I just needed to breathe. Their eyes met, and for the first time there was no fear in them, only gratitude. Edward stood at the doorway, leaning on his cane. He looked smaller now, humbled, but in his eyes glimmered something that had been missing for years. Tenderness. I've had the vents sealed, he said. No more secrets hidden in these walls. Amara nodded. That's good, sir. He hesitated. You've done something for us that money never could. You gave me my daughter back. Amara's smile trembled. I didn't heal her, Mr. Harrington. She healed because she was finally seen. He looked between the two women, one born into wealth, the other into struggle, and realized that love had found its way into his home through the humblest heart of all. For days afterward, the mansion stirred back to life. Servants returned. Laughter began echoing faintly through the halls, and for the first time in years, the air didn't feel heavy. Alara began walking through the gardens each morning, leaning on Amara's arm. "It's strange," she said once, stopping by the roses. "I used to think this house was a cage. Now it feels like a place I can rebuild." Amara looked around at the sunlight spilling over the hedges. "It was never the house," she said softly. "It was the memories trapped inside it." Alara turned toward her, eyes shining. "You're staying, aren't you?" "If you'll have me." Alara squeezed her hand. "Always." A few weeks later, the Harrington Foundation announced a new program, the Isabel Initiative, providing care and emotional support for women battling chronic illness. Edward credited his daughter's recovery as its inspiration. Yet when the cameras flashed and reporters asked for the story, it was Alara who insisted that Amara stand beside her. "This woman saved my life," Alara said to the press, voice steady, eyes full of love. "Not through medicine or miracles, but by reminding me that healing begins when someone truly listens." As the cameras clicked, Amara felt her chest tighten. She had never imagined her name would be spoken with such pride. For so long, she'd been invisible, a shadow among people's stories. But here, in this mansion of second chances, she'd finally become part of one. Later that evening, when the guests were gone and the halls quiet again, Edward found Amara on the balcony, gazing at the stars. "You remind me of my wife," he said softly. "She had the same strength in her kindness." Amara smiled faintly. "She must have loved deeply." "She did, and so do you." He placed a gentle hand on her shoulder, a gesture not of authority, but of gratitude. "If you ever wish to leave," he said, "know that this house will always be your home." She looked at him, eyes glistening. "Thank you, sir. But for now, I think I'll stay. I promised Alara I'd teach her how to live again." He nodded, smiling through tears. "Then you've already fulfilled a promise I couldn't." The night breeze carried the faintest echo of lavender, softer now, peaceful, no longer haunting. It was just memory, and in that moment, Amara realized that some scents don't fade. They simply transform. As the lights dimmed across the estate, the three of them sat in the garden, a father, a daughter, and the maid who had turned grief into grace. Fireflies danced over the grass, and laughter rose into the summer air. For the first time in years, the mansion didn't echo with sorrow. It sang with life. Do you believe love alone can heal what medicine cannot? Or does healing begin the moment we choose to truly see one another? Thank you for staying until the end of this story. If even a single moment, a look, or a word touched your heart, don't just scroll away. Tell me in the comments where you're watching from and what part made you feel the most. Your words, your support, they're what keep this family of stories alive. Subscribe so you don't miss what's coming next. The next story is even deeper, more powerful, and trust me, you won't want to miss it. Click the video on your screen. Your next story begins there.